back in. Anyway, we're jumping back in. All right, I think we've started. Now, listen, we have 1 week till spring break. Okay. Now, don't let your mind already go there. Okay. Work hard. We're gonna work hard, and the harder we work, we've seen it time and again. The harder we work, the faster the week goes. Okay. And so let's just jump in and we'll get it taken care of. Report cards will go home today. They will need to be signed and brought back in the next day or two. And that also means, there's my little clip. It also means, because of where we are in the year, that we have started today. We're starting our last 9 weeks. Okay. So that's kind of hard to believe in a way. Also. So, in one way, it feels like we've still just started this year. In another way, it feels like we've been working a long time. Come a long way this year. In a lot of different ways. Alright. So you can look on our little target right here, and I'll put it up. I guess I could go ahead and go to our slides, but let me go back to that. Alright, same thing as right here. I can identify, define, and draw. What does that say? Perpendicular lines. That's a really big word, but we've heard that word lots of times in our Go Noodle. Okay, and what do you remember what they do when they say perpendicular lines? They do. They make a big T with their arms. Okay, trying to be like the lines, and of course my arms are not perfectly straight. You could even do it that way. Okay, and so what we want to know is what those are exactly. How do you make them if you need to make them? We also want to know the symbol for them, because sometimes you'll be reading maybe in your workbook or anywhere else, and it might say draw perpendicular lines, but they might use the symbol for it. So I want to make sure you know what those symbols are for that. Now, the reason we're also going to add on lesson 4 today, and lesson 4 disappeared, is that this is what lesson 4 is. I can identify, define, and draw parallel lines. And so they've created 2 completely separate lessons for this one. Really, a lot of times you see these 2 thoughts or ideas together. Okay, what did they do in the Go Noodle? Yeah, we would do this as parallel lines, and we're going to see why we do that. We're going to learn the symbol for that and how to identify parallel lines. Now I'm going to add one other thought in here. We want to know about perpendicular and parallel, because we're talking about those 2 things. We also need to know what intersecting lines are. What do they do when they say intersecting lines? They actually cross their arms like this. I go like this. I like doing this better. Either one really would work as far as the Go Noodle. But if you know what intersecting lines are, you kind of need to know what those are too and how they go along. Because one of our sets of lines, perpendicular or parallel, they do intersect, but they intersect in a special way. So we're going to talk about all those ideas. Okay. And like I said, because it's 2 lessons, even though this probably will wind up being about the same length as 1, I'm not going to do the review problems today. We're just going to jump right in. Okay, let me go back to 3. All right, so we're going to start with perpendicular. Okay, and before we do, last week, I forget what lesson it was. What were we doing last week that we needed this?
We were in this, and we were in module 4.
Yeah, we started 4, and for some reason we didn't hand these out. Maybe it was because we shortened. Remember, we shortened lesson 2. And part of lesson 2 was, hey, what are these things right here? Pushed. Ah, there we go. Ooh, okay. So we've got a right angle, which is 90 degrees. An acute angle was what? Less than, you know, it was smaller. It's a acute angle. Okay. This one was more than. And a straight angle, 180 degrees, a straight line. Okay. Now the one thing we didn't do that day was hand out one of those days. A little right angle template tool. Now all this is a paper circle. Okay, but it's a circle. It's not one that I've drawn and it's a little lopsided and crooked. Okay. This is a good circle where if I folded it, you know, all the lines are going to match. Okay. When you do that, when you take a circle like this and the fold lines are already there because these have been used in the past, but there's no sense in throwing away something that can be used again because this is all we did with them. We took it and we folded it where it was lined up. Okay. One side's not bigger than the other. The lines are right together. Then we folded it again. Again, we lined up all our corners and edges. And so even though the fold lines are there, when I hand you one of these in a little bit, make sure when you fold it that it still does line up. Okay. Now, yes, that's a fourth of a circle if we were still doing fractions. But what we're focused on is more this corner right here. Because we have just created, which one of these?
Right.
We've created a right angle. Pardon me. And so I could take this and use this to measure any angle that I thought might be a right angle. So if I flip over to, this might be a little challenging to do on the board, but I can kind of give you the idea. And I'm needing to show you this because of perpendicular lines. All right. So if I had an angle that you could actually see, if I had an angle, okay, let's say we thought that was 90 degrees, but we weren't sure. And let's say I didn't know a lot about angles yet, and I had this one too. Okay. Now, I could, even though these are rather large, it might be better to have a larger circle with these, but I still could use this. And I'd come down to the corner. I'll turn around and show you guys in just a second. I'd put it right there and see if the lines of my angle matched up with the lines right here. Okay? Do they?
Yes.
Yeah, they do. I know my back is to a lot of you, but I would put it right there at the corner. Now, if one of my lines went like up under it, I would know that that angle is smaller. You know, I try to line this up, and does that work? No, this is going up under it, you know. I guess you can see over here. All right, that's definitely not. And then if I had an obtuse angle, okay, when I go to line it up right there at the corner, this one is, what, you know, it's way too open. And so this becomes a tool where I could measure to see if something is a right angle without having to get out that fancy tool called a protractor, which is actually made for measuring angles. And we're going to get those out, just not yet. But this works just as well if all you're trying to do is say, hey, this is a right angle, obtuse, or acute. Now, if I want to know exactly how many degrees this is, then I'm going to need my protractor. You know, if I'm going to be very specific, I need my protractor. And like I said, we'll get those out later this week. So I'm going to hand you one of these in just a minute, and that's what it's for. If I happen to hand you one, like I'm looking at that one doesn't have fold lines, we'll get it taken care of, but most of these do. All right, so let me go back to where we were. I wanted you to know what these were when we get these out. All right, so what is a perpendicular line? perpendicular lines are lines that cross each other. They run into each other.
Like a plus sign.
Okay, you see how these two lines have run into each other. But when they do run into each other, they create right angles. Okay? So that little box, I don't know if you remember this, but last week when we started talking about angles, we said if the little arc right there in the corner was a box,
It's a right.
it is a right angle. So if you ever see that printed on a page, and the number for the angle is not, like, I don't know how big that angle is. Yeah, you do. It's 90 degrees. Okay. Sometimes they'll put the curved arc there, even if it's 90 degrees. They did that on one of our pages last week because they wanted us to measure with one of these and tell, and they didn't want to give it away. If they put that box there, they've given it away that it's a right angle. But this is the neat thing about perpendicular lines. If I have two lines that have come together like that, and one of the angles is right, all of the angles are right. Okay? So if this is a right angle, then the one right beside it is also a right angle. This one underneath it is going to be a right angle, and this one is. Let me draw those on there so you can see them a little bit better. Okay? So there would be another right angle right here. There would also be a right angle right here. And there would also be a right angle right here. Okay? And I could take this and measure with it, and it would work every time. Okay? So, two lines that intersect each other, they cross each other, and they form right angles. So it has to have those two things. Lines that, cross over each other, and they form right angles. All right, can you look around the room right now? Can you see anything that you think? Now, sometimes we have to play the I think game. We don't have, the ability to always run up to something we see out around us and measure it, okay? But do you see anything just in our classroom? There's tons of stuff on the walls, on table, just that you think has perpendicular lines to it. All right, everybody's looking. And maybe once you hear a few examples of other people saying some ideas, if you're not sure, you'll start seeing them everywhere, really. Yeah.
Up on there, the papers.
The papers that are on the wall. So maybe the corner of those papers was a little harder to reach. So if I came over here, maybe the corner right here. Okay. Anything else? Because they're all around you. Yeah. Definitely the blocks on the floor. I hope so anyway. Okay, and if I got down there and measured one of the corners, okay, yeah.
The lines on the clock.
The lines on the clock, the lines that I've drawn, or
The lines that you drew.
okay. If I drew them straight, then yes. I got pretty close. Hey, I got pretty close. Okay.
But it is.
Very hard to get real exact when you're just drawing. What do we need? What do we call that thing that helps us draw a whole lot? Yeah, a straight edge is going to help you draw a whole lot straighter and make sure you have perpendicular lines if you ever have to draw them. Okay, I'm going to hand you one of these. I want you to fold it, okay, into that right angle template is what we've called it. And then we'll go from there. Let you get these into the form that they need to be in. You'll see the fold lines. Okay. That's actually so you're actually folding this circle into fourths, but you just want it to be real exact and lined up just as you can get it. Some of these actually got marked on, which really doesn't matter for what we're doing. Okay. that one. All right, so this is what you should have at this point. Just make sure that when it's like this, it's not, you know, watch this. You know how something can get crooked and the corners aren't together? Try to make sure that, you know, the top corner and the bottom corner are together. That's going to help make sure that this is a right angle. All right, if you put your mask on, and for just a second, I want you to go to some things in the room that you think might be right angles and check and see. When you come back, we're going to talk about what you found. Okay, just leave my desk out of it. I'm sure there's
Would that work? Is that, am I holding it right?
No, you're putting this corner, this sharp, I guess you'd call it a sharp pointy corner, at the same corner. But you gotta put the corner at it. Not the rounded corner, so turn it to where the pointy corner is lined up with it. Yes, like that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah?
I didn't touch it, but like I did that.
Sure. Yeah, some things you might just have to kind of hover over a little bit. Yeah. And you know, it needs to make sure that everything kind of lines up and works together. If those kinds of things are crooked, you're going to have paper jam an awful lot. We definitely have the blocks are at right angles so that our building is not crooked. Find a few things, measure a few things, and then we'll come back together. We'll talk about them. Okay. We're going to come back in a minute. It could be high, low, somewhere in the middle. Yeah, you call people. Over there. Yeah.
Yeah, Gage already done that one. I done this.
All right, just another minute or so.
Did it?
Now, what are you finding there? Because
Oh, the edge of the board.
Yeah, that's what I did.
The edge of Miss Wendy's computer.
Not.
It's too rounded, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot. If
It's
it was just
too
straight
round.
up, just a tad bit.
It's too round.
yeah, I would.
I ain't gonna put
You
it.
look beautiful. Dang, why are you doing this?
Yeah. I would hope it's good and straight with right angles.
I found something. She found something.
Oh, you're ready for sleep? Alright, so if you would, but there's no angle there. Alright, let's make our way back to our seats. Alright, what are some things? What are some things that we found to be for sure right angles? What's one? Yeah, just come over here to the corner of the flag. Okay, so if we took that piece of material and laid it out, we would see that it has right angles on its corners, okay? The what? The door? Yeah, you got up to that high corner on the door, didn't you? So our door has right angles at its corners. Yeah. The window? Yeah, the window. Okay. Ishma? The bookshelf. You got on up on the high corner of this one. Yeah. Okay. Our learning target thing, and actually this is a I guess you call it a fancy page protector. But you put it in the corner. Actually, I think you put it here, but you could come out that far and do it as well. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, he came out here to the printer drawer. This piece actually slides out right here. So if you was measuring this, you know, if things like that are not at right angles,
It wouldn't open right.
we'd have a lot of stuck drawers. Yeah.
The whiteboard?
Here. Or
the other
this
one in
one?
the high corner by the.
Okay. So right here. Okay? The actual whiteboard, yeah. Your book, okay? The corner of her book.
One of your books, this is
Okay, another book back here. Yeah. Okay. Which part of it was a right angle? The reason I asked that, do you look on the side or bent out? Right here on the front. Yes. Okay. Well, all right. Anything else?
The edge of the, like that lunch counter.
The lunch.
That paper.
One of these.
No.
This.
Yes.
Yeah. Most of our papers that are, I guess, a standard size paper, those are 8.5 by 11 sheets, will have right angles on them. Yeah.
the edge of the board.
This board. Yeah. Okay.
Bookmark.
Here.
Your book.
Your rectangle shaped bookmark. Well. Okay. And it's very hard to tell, but inside right here, this little flag is a right angle or so close we would need a protractor to tell otherwise. Yeah. Of the bookshelf.
Yeah.
Were you the one that was laying it like right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the top of this bookshelf. You think about these bookshelves, like y'all, several bookshelves and things like that have been named.
They have to.
You've got the top of them that's got right angles, the sides of them have right angles, and they've got to, or the pieces are not going to come together and match up well.
I know,
Yeah.
it just fall.
Oh yeah, look down at the floor. Look at all the right angles that are on those tiles, those square tiles.
There's
Okay.
four.
Yeah, there's 4 inside each
Just
one,
like
isn't
there's
there?
4 of these.
But if you look at the lines that are between them,
They're not even straight.
well, some are and some are a little off, but they are what kind of lines?
Perpendicular.
Yeah. Most of the time they are perpendicular lines. Every now and then we can see them shift just a little bit. Okay.
The line goes.
All right, if you would take your right angle template and lay it up kind of where your name tag is and just leave that alone. We don't want to lose it. They're small. But our whole point of doing that is being able to spot those right angles or what we think is a right angle is we want to know what a right angle is so that we can tell what perpendicular lines are. Okay? Because you can't have perpendicular lines without right angles. All right. So, just looking at this definition, perpendicular lines are lines which meet or cross at a right angle. Now, I told you, and I'll just throw the line up. I'll come back to that now. Let me put this word up on the board over here. What does that say? Alright, I told you we were going to have to talk about this because there are times you're going to see lines that cross each other, okay?
Looks like it has.
It does. I've got 4 different angles here. Now, are those right angles?
No.
Let's check. When I put this right here, it takes away some of it. Interesting. I knew that was going to be harder to do on this. Let
Is
me.
there not a way, like,
hold
when
on.
you get your lines on there that you can save?
That's a great question. I bet there is a way.
Take your pin off. There's a way on there.
All right, let me do it where it's a little more obvious. Okay.
Yeah, that's not like.
This is a little more obvious.
That's a cute.
Okay. Now this angle is what? No, hold on.
No, obtuse.
This angle right here.
Obtuse.
Oh, that's a
That's obtuse. And we can see that with our eyes. We don't even have to use that. Okay? These two lines cross each other, but they do not form right angles. Okay? Look at this angle. This one is what? Acute. So is this one. And this one across here is obtuse. So you just told me we've got a collection here of acute and obtuse angles. None of them are right. These two lines are not perpendicular, but they are. Yes. They intersect each other. Intersect just means they cross each other. They run into each other. You ever heard of an intersection? Okay. Where do you most likely hear that word? It goes along with what? Cars driving. It's where two streets cross each other, and a lot of times there's a stop sign or a traffic light. Now in Alamo or most of Crockett County, we don't have a lot of traffic lights, but we see those more in like Jackson or Humboldt, those places, you know, that are a little bit bigger. But maybe there's a stop sign or two streets come together. Now sometimes they are perpendicular to each other, sometimes they're not. Okay, close to where I live, when I turn, I have to turn my car and turn it almost going back the other way. My street, those two roads are not perpendicular. They are very much like this. Okay. Anyway, intersecting lines are not perpendicular to each other, or could be. Let me say that again. Intersecting lines could be perpendicular, or they could not be perpendicular. Okay. Yeah. If they're straight and create right angles, then they're also perpendicular. Okay. But these right here are just intersecting. Whereas if we tried with, you know, see how it's hard to do without a straight edge, but if you had to pick between the two and say, all right, which ones are perpendicular? Definitely the red ones look closer to being perpendicular. These intersect and these intersect, but these are perpendicular. Perpendicular lines are like special intersecting lines. Okay?
They have to have right angles.
Yes, they have to have right angles. Okay. So, the symbols. Let me show you how to write that. If this was some lines that we had, okay. And if this was line AB, you'll remember having labels like that the other day, and if this was line CD, okay? And if I wanted to tell you that those were perpendicular to each other, but the word perpendicular, that's a long word. I don't want to have to write it all the time. All right, so I would say line AB, remember there's a symbol for that too, is perpendicular to, and it looks like an upside down T. Why it's upside down, I'm not quite sure, because a lot of times when we show it with our hands, we might do this. But it's upside down, and then it would say to line CD. Okay? Line AB is perpendicular to line CD. And that's a quick way to write that with your symbols. So the perpendicular symbol is this upside down capital T. Okay? Questions about that? And you will see that, especially in places like your workbook when they're giving you directions. Okay? Yeah. What is? The symbol part? Okay. Does it get confusing when I start doing this?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you don't have to worry about this a whole lot. You know where you're going to see this more? When you're about in the 10th grade or 11th grade or 12th grade. You got a while. And you take a class like geometry. Okay. Now, we're going to see this a little bit in our workbook, but I'm definitely going to be here to help you with that. Okay? All right. I just wanted you to kind of get introduced to these symbols so that you know. You might not remember what it all is, but you'll know, hey, that's a symbol for something when you see it. Okay?
Is that on the line too?
Huh?
It doesn't look like that too.
It doesn't look like an upside down T?
It does. It looks like a T that you hit off of.
Ah, that's another way to remember it. Okay.
Yeah, it does.
An I without the top line. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could look at it. Okay.
It looks like a line. Looks like a forward step.
All right.
That's what it is.
So, if you were going to draw perpendicular lines, what would you do? If all you had was your pencil, piece of paper, maybe something like this, that's all we're going to have in just a minute. How could we draw a perpendicular line? What would be the easiest thing for us to do in just a minute when we try this? Yeah. Okay. Now, did you know that you could use something like a thick piece of paper as a straight line?
Yeah.
In fact, I think I mentioned this in second period. I was like, look, if we don't have our rulers one day, if we don't have our rulers one day, you could take something like this. It's a piece of scratch paper. And I'm going to match my corners up because that helps to make sure my line is straight. And if I laid this on my paper, this is thick enough where I could put my pencil tip, the point of it against it, and it's strong enough to keep my pencil moving in a straight line. Well, isn't this some thick folded paper too?
Yeah.
All right, so we are really low on scratch paper. So let me get some out. This is just some old stuff. Here's past. Now, if this tears right, it'll be enough. If I had a huge piece and a tiny piece, yeah. Here's some fancy scratch paper. We are in a practice drawing these just a little bit. Fancy. Okay.
Yeah, I wonder how many
So now, Charlotte just noticed if she took the corner of this, the corner that's not where I've torn it, and put her right angle template right there, it is a right. All right, so I'm going to take my right angle template, and to make some, this right here is why some of your templates have a little bit of marking on them, okay? So if you would take your pencil, we're going to trace around the right angle corner, not any of the rounded corners. Just like that. And when I pull that away, those are intersecting lines. Those are perpendicular intersecting lines. Well, I thought they had to cross each other and one come all the way down. Well, sometimes they do, and sometimes they're just like that. Okay. Now, I could open that up and make it longer. Yeah. What was your question? All right. Any questions? Alright, we're going to keep moving because this is just the first half here. Okay. Alright, now, in a little while you will see on your problem set things like this where they ask you to trace some perpendicular lines that you see in regular everyday things. Okay. Some of this we might wind up talking about and doing together. This right here says, how do you know if two lines are perpendicular? If I walked up to you and asked you that question, could you talk to me and tell me why you think two lines are perpendicular?
Yes.
What are the two things it's got to have? What's one of them? Got to have right angles, and the two lines have got to what? Intersect. They've got to intersect and cross each other. Okay. If you can speak it, then you can write that down. Okay. And that's all they are wanting in a quick way. It does not have to be some big, long, fancy paragraph. All right. And then later we'll see some shapes, and we'll actually use our right angle template to decide, does that shape have some perpendicular lines in it or does it not? Okay, and like I said, some of these we'll probably do together just to get used to them since they're a little different. All right, I'm going to switch gears. All right, y'all just reminding us what perpendicular lines were. Would you please put pencils down, everything down? We're not drawing right now. Put your right angle template in the corner. That's not quite as important for this next section, but we will need it with our problem set. So we'll come back to it. All right, and we've switched over to lesson 4. Now, y'all already know what it's about. Okay. Let's come back to that in just a second. All right, parallel lines. What do we think parallel lines are? Now, these are perpendicular. Parallel lines, this is what they do in the Go Noodle, okay? Like my arms are, acting like the parallel lines. What do you think they are? Yeah.
Parallel lines are lines that don't touch each other.
Okay. You said probably one of the most important things about parallel lines. It's two lines that are working together, but they never touch each other. They could go on forever and they will never run into each other. Okay? If they are never going to run into each other, can you tell me anything else about them? Yeah.
They have to be straight.
Okay, they definitely have to be straight. Because if one of them is slightly bent, they will eventually run into each other. Okay? All right. Perpendicular lines are lines that form right angles when they intersect. Parallel lines, they'll never intersect. They'll never touch each other or bump into each other or cross over each other. Yeah.
In the word parallel,
In the word parallel,
there's parallel.
there are parallel lines. And I say that each year so to help you remember. Look at those two L's. Okay, those are parallel. Yeah.
It's parallel. Lines are kind of like the interstate because there's like one going this way.
Mhm. Yeah, you can definitely look at it that way. So parallel lines will often look like this. And they're hard to draw sometimes because it's hard to draw two lines that are the same distance apart constantly. You might see one of the easiest ways really to draw parallel lines is if you have something like this. Okay? And if I lay it down, I don't think the board is going to let me. It's not going to let me touch it with that and with the marker and with the pen at the same time. So, if I try to do that here, if I will draw on one side of the ruler like that, keep my ruler there, And then, don't move, don't move. And then draw on the other side of the ruler too. See how it moved? You gotta be careful. Okay, when I pick those up, because when I did that, those two lines are the same distance apart all the time. Parallel lines have to be the same distance apart here as well as all the way down here. Because look at these two lines. This is the kind of question you'll see a lot, especially on things like case or 10 ready. They'll give you this kind of question. I'll give you a line that's maybe like, kind of straight. And then they'll have one like this with it. And they're not touching each other. Okay, and they'll ask you, are those parallel lines?
No.
They will touch eventually. These cannot be parallel. One, they're not the same distance apart in both, in all of their spots. But if these lines kept going, look what would eventually happen. They would eventually cross each other. You see that? And because of that, they are not parallel lines. Now, you don't have that part drawn when they ask you that question, because they'll ask it to you like this. But if you can tell that those are, hey, if we kept drawing those lines and they would eventually run into each other, they're not parallel. Okay? Parallel lines will never touch each other. They will never intersect each other.
But
Yeah.
what if you went to, instead of drawing it straight, what if you could cut bring it
Just
down,
a piece of it?
Bring it down, make it
Straighten them out. You mean like straighten one of them out? Well, I mean, that's different. But in a question like what I was talking about, they're talking about if they were just like this and they didn't change except you drew them longer. Would they ever run into each other? Okay, so look around the room. Do you see anything in our room that could possibly be parallel lines? Now, I don't have a template to hand you this time to say, hey, go measure and check. Parallel lines a little different. What do you think, Will? Okay. Oh, definitely. All right. I hope when I buy something like this that it's made of some straight lines. And so this line here and this line here should be parallel to each other. What other lines on this? Well, it's hard to see, but this side of the pan and this side of the pan should also be parallel. All right, lots of other examples in the room. Gage, what do you think? This paper, same thing, like the edges. Yeah, these would be parallel to each other. If I tore this out and you could see the edge up there, those two lines would be parallel to each other. What else? The number 11, if it's drawn straight, the two ones are usually parallel to each other. My crooked writing, not so much. Yeah.
Right here, there's you could walk in from where these lines
Okay. 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 Yeah. Okay. Her pigtails are very parallel.
I didn't know what to draw.
Look at the walls. Yeah. Which part of the wall are you looking at?
like from the top to like where the board ends. Put like a go around.
It's like a
Are you looking at the brick? Okay. The lines on the brick are parallel to each other. Okay. The short ones that are like this, and then the ones that are longer like this.
The walls do right angles in the corner.
Yeah, they.
wait,
Definitely have the walls are right angle at the corners. All right. What else? Yeah. And that line, you can see it wiggle just a little bit in places, but those are parallel lines going down the sides of the tile. Yeah. They can be. You know, if we've got them perfectly straight, you mean like our arms? Yeah. If one of them's a little bit, then if I was Stretch Armstrong and you could pull my arms forever long, one of them's eventually going to be like this. Y'all know what that is? That was a toy back in the...
I have one.
Oh, goodness. A long time ago. All right. Anybody else have an example? Yeah. I've got 2 number lines. And mostly because they go along, I taped them along the lines of the floor. Yeah. The sides of your desk. That's what you're going to say. Okay. With the what? Yeah. Yeah, again, if I cut them the right side, you know, the same side.
Miss
Yeah.
Wendy, what about on the side of our desk when it's round? Oh, you.
The sides of our desk. What was the last thing you said?
Round.
It is, but we're not looking at the edges, the corners. These lines are parallel to each other, and these lines are parallel to each other. Okay? So we're kind of forgetting about the corners just then. Yeah. Your binder, you know, the edges this way and the edges this way. One more thing.
Stand up there.
Yeah, any piece of paper, the sides of it here, the sides of it, that's, you know, a piece of paper that's the standard size that hasn't been cut. All right, last thing, and then we're going to move on. Mm-hmm. The edges of them, yes. Okay. We did that. All right. We're going to create parallel lines in just a second. However, I want you to know this symbol. All right, if you see some lines, I guess you would see this more in a, let's say I drew a shape and it was really straight like it's supposed to be. Okay. And if this was point A and this was point B, C and D. Okay. And who can tell me 2 of the lines that are parallel? Is it just that y'all know and it's Monday and I don't want to raise my hand, or are there really just 2 people in here that know?
It's in mine, though.
Okay. Caleb, what are 2 lines that are parallel to each other? All right, but remember you name a line with 2 letters. If you just said B, B's a point. Okay. Pick a line. Like BD. Okay. Let's just say line BD. Hold on. Alright, sometimes it's just got the flat line on the top and not the arrows. Our book will do that. Okay? Line BD is right here, right? What line is parallel to BD? And everybody else in the room is thinking this, and you're going to check yourself. There is a line in that shape that is parallel to BD. Just guess. What's his name? AC? Sure. So this line, and this line, ouch, are, okay, watch, here comes the symbol. There are the 2 lines. There, that's the name of that line. That's the name of the other line. The symbol is right here.
I was thinking of it would be 2 lines that was there.
Okay. Okay, let's not do that.
I found it on.
Now, hold on. This line right here, what's the name of that line right there? It is line what? Line AB. It could be BA. You could say it either way. But let's go with line AB. What line is it perpendicular to? We talked about that about 10 minutes ago. Please don't let it have already fallen out of your brain. Okay. Mason? Yes. No, wait. Sorry. A, B, and C, D are parallel. I changed it on you, didn't I? Okay. Which one is perpendicular? You know this. There's two of them that are perpendicular to it. What do you think? A, B is perpendicular to what lines? Help them out. B, D. Yes. This one right here. This and this are perpendicular to each other because right here they form a right angle. So we would say B, D. Good. Okay. All right. What? Y'all said that these two are parallel, but are there two other parallel lines in that shape? Yeah. CD and AB are parallel to each other. Okay. Sometimes you'll see these little symbols like this. And then you might see this right here. So that has told me without all this that A and B are parallel, and I mean AB and CD are parallel, and AC and BD are parallel. The ones with the one little flag thing, I don't know what they call that little symbol. That I need to look up. Those go together. These go together. These are parallel to each other. These are parallel to each other. Okay. So there's some little things you might see along the way. Okie doke. I need to give you, stay with me a little bit longer. We're almost done. Okay. It's just making sure we get all the little things about these types of lines. All right, I'm going to hand you a straight edge. Again, it's not a weapon. It's not glasses. It's not, blah, blah, blah. We get it. Okay.
Mine already has glasses. Oh, I got a different one than mine.
It's not hard. But you know what? Faith kind of took over Ishmael's word there for a second. She said, this is easy, and it is. But if you never hear these things, it's not that it's hard. It's that if you never hear it, you don't know it.
It is more easy.
Okay? Yeah, but Ishmael, you still got to hear it. It might not be the most exciting math thing, but some people really like geometry. Okay? I missed somebody.
Oh, I got green again.
I got yellow instead of white.
Okay. Now, remember I told you one of the easiest ways to make parallel lines is just to lay your ruler down one time and trace on both sides of it without your ruler shifting around. So if you would lay this on some part of your fancy scratch paper that's not been drawn on. Okay?
That's hard.
Hard? No, not really.
Does it have to be big?
Alright, we're going to put it on there and we're going to draw, and like I said, just the easiest way is just to go, ta-da, there are my two parallel lines. Okay, go ahead and give that a try. I think move these. Oh, yeah. Okay, good. I can tell. See, these are really good.
Mine are the straightest lines in the world. Mine are the straightest lines I know.
Be careful because if you don't use your straight edge, for one, it's obvious.
Read my straight edge.
All right. If you would take that straight edge and put it up the corner of your desk where your right angle template. Those are two things that you may need at times during your problem set. Okay. I just had something to ask y'all about or tell you about, and it has left my brain.
Good.
Let me give it a second. Maybe it will float back in there. Just out of curiosity, how many of you are enjoying something different besides numbers and all that you like the geometry side of math, and that just kind of a nice break? How many of you are ready to get back to numbers and more adding, subtracting, you know, you like that side of it more?
Yeah.
And maybe you like both. Maybe you like both.
both.
Yeah. This is just a kind of a little detour for a little bit. Now, I will say in a handful of days, we're going to put some numbers with this. Okay. And I love that part. And I think you'll enjoy that part in a few days.
You said
Okay.
in a minute. I was finished.
No, not in a minute. I didn't mean to say. In several minutes, if we add up all those days. This is so. Okay. Let's do this. Let's remind ourselves about parallel lines. Okay. What are they? Let's put it into words. What would you say if somebody asked you what parallel lines are?
Parallel lines are lines that never touch and they can go on forever.
Okay. You know, they run kind of near each other and they will never touch or run into each other. Yeah.
Parallel lines are lines that work together that never touch.
Okay. Another way to say it. Yep.
Parallel lines are straight lines that never touch and never go.
Okay. All right. What about perpendicular lines? What are those? Will, go ahead.
Lines that will form right angles.
Okay. They also what? They two lines that intersect each other, they run into each other, and they form right angles. Okay, what are intersecting lines? What does that mean?
Ones that don't form right angles, they're usually bigger or smaller.
Okay. Add on to that. Yeah.
They can form right angles, but they also they can have other angles.
Okay. Intersecting lines don't have to form right angles, but they can. Those are perpendicular lines are special intersecting lines. Intersecting lines just run into each other. Okay. All right, let's take our restroom break. We will come back. We will do our go noodle. Just to remind us, get that
wakes me
fresh in our brain, wake us up a little bit, and then we'll jump into our problem set. Okay.
I wish we had like activities early in the morning because that will wake us all up.